What up? So the tradition is we always share to start off. The running joke is who makes the rookie mistake when you share. For the noise to come out, I can't let it be me. There we go. All right. Nah, you good. So tonight is a good one. We got some live studio audience here. We got some virtual people. There's a couple of watch parties, so shout out to all my people in Texas watching right now. Joe, unfortunately, is traveling back from LA. He was at the Adobe conference for the past couple of days, so he's en route home. And hate that he's missing this because he's been wanting to do something like this for a while, but the moment presented itself, so we couldn't miss it. We got somebody pulling in. Kia Javon is about to pull in now. So parameters of today. So what are we doing? This is a live conversation where we're going to listen to Jesus is King, which is Kanye's new album. And track by track, we're going to have a conversation. So I got a couple cue questions, but there's going to be one constant question that each person will have the chance to respond to after each song. So if you want to write it down or kind of take a mental note, because I'm going to come to you after each song and ask this one question. What was the most unexpected thing you heard and or felt after that song? So for those that are watching, the question again is, what was the most unexpected thing you heard and or felt after hearing the song? So I'm going to buy us a little time till Javon gets a seat at the table, and then we'll do some introductions. We got some new faces and some new voices contributing to the conversation today. But it should be a good one. And for those that have my number, we don't always see the comments in real time. So text me if you have something you want to contribute. Kia's going to try to read them in real time as well. But again, if you have my number, text me. I'm not going to say hit me in my DMs because Kia always look at me crazy when I say that. Come on in, Vaughn.
Say that.
I said it a few times. So grab a seat at the table, Doc. So Javon just kind of giving everybody an overview of what to expect today. He came in with the suit on. So for those that don't know, he looked just like his daddy. So so again, after each song, the question that we're going to talk about is, what was the most unexpected thing you heard and or felt after hearing that song? So for those watching, just so we don't get hit with copyright, when we're playing the song, I'm going to mute the mic. After the song is over, I'll cut the mic back on so you can engage. So what I would invite you to do is, as we're going track by track, stream it, play it. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on Apple Music, Spotify. So we're starting with track 1, going all the way to track 11. The album's 27 minutes long, but we should be good. That should be Michelle. Yes. That's Michelle, right on time. So with that, we're going to do some quick introductions. Michelle, you come through the kitchen? Yeah. There you go.
This is so regular. Right?
Oh, yeah. This is home. So we're going to start with ladies first. Everybody knows Michelle, so we'll let Michelle kind of introduce herself.
Oh, hi, I'm Michelle.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, that's good. All right. Hi, I'm Jocelyn.
I'm Javon. Javon. Yeah.
Oh, rookie mistake. She made it.
Seth.
And we have a live studio audience that you hear their voices coming through. So as our icebreaker, I'm gonna give you 3 questions that we're gonna kind of set the temperature of the conversation with, right? So the first one, and this is one that we'll talk about. So this is before we start the album. So those again watching, please share in your comments what your thoughts are. And I did a poll on this one. So this one isn't unfamiliar. But how do you determine a good song? So is it by the vibe that it gives you, by the beat, or by the content? And what I mean content, the words, what the artist is saying. So I'm going to give you a minute to kind of think about that. while you guys are writing or thinking about yours in the poll, just kind of give you what some people said. The majority of people said it's a feeling or a vibe. So we had 8 votes there, 3 votes for content of words, and only 2 votes for beat to music. So most could tell a good song by the vibe. All right. So the second question: do you have different expectations based upon the genre of music?
Are we writing these on different cards?
Nah. These cards are just yours. Just to be able to take notes.
Okay.
So again, the question is: do you have different expectations based upon the genre of music? And then the third question, I'm gonna wait right before we go into the album. So,
Of course.
a little teaser. So, start with whoever wants to go first. So, how do you determine a good song?
Wow. Okay.
No, go ahead.
Well, I think good is a spectrum. So, like, what are we talking about in terms of good? For me, it's a combination of all of them.
Okay.
Sometimes the content could be good. The beat is whack. It's not a good song, even though the content and the lyrics were good. Also, you can have bad lyrics over cool beats, and it's a vibe and it's something you want to listen to in the club. So, and then the vibe, I think, is what those both do for you, personally. So I think that's subjective.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think the intent of that was supposed to be subjective, right? So I think we all determine what quality of good means to us, right? So use it under the preface of not pop culture definition just because it's playing on the radio, but like what makes it to your playlist. I guess I should kind of specify that.
Well, I certainly I answered the poll online, and for me it was a vibe, and I think about that kind of what Javon was saying is it's a holistic thing. So when I put a song on, what is the entire song making me feel? And I probably might, depending on what it is, might listen to it a couple times because maybe I missed the words or something because I was in that moment kind of honing on the music. Or the flip of that, maybe I missed something very intricate that they did with one of the instruments because I was listening to the words. But initially, it's what resonates with me. So back in the day when you used to buy CDs, I had this thing where I would put the CD in and I would just listen. And typically there was one song out of the 10, 12, 15 that would immediately hit me. And then it's like, okay, now I got to listen to this and repeat. And that's my thing. So for me, it is always about a vibe because it's what resonates and what hits me like right in my gut as soon as I hear it.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I think it's the same for me. It has to be like a nice gumbo. It has to be beat, content, lyrics, the vibe I'm getting once I'm listening to it. And then I guess like an A+ would be, can I zone out to it? Can I let it ride out for the entirety of the song?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, good.
Okay. All right. Audience, about the same thumbs up? Thumbs up? Okay. So, transitioning to the second question. Based upon the genre of music, do you have different expectations?
Nope.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
more.
So depending on the genre. So a little bit of my background, I'm a minister. So just to use gospel music for an example, I have a certain expectation with that. So it has to have some kind of content.
It's got to be biblically sound.
Yeah. In terms of hip hop, I'm more focused on lyrics. So if the MC is like really spitting, if they're on top of their game, that's my expectation. And then the beat. If it's jazz, how is everything grooving? How is everything syncing? So I think there has to be a certain expectation depending on the genre of music.
And I would agree. I mean, that's what I wrote down too. Gospel has a different expectation for me than heavy metal or grunge would. I wouldn't expect them to talk about Jesus or nothing in any of those records. I don't mean that they're bad records, but my expectation in a good gospel song is that it's on par with what a gospel song is.
Okay.
For me, I don't have a different expectation on genre because again, I'm basically like, what's my visceral reaction? So mine is not genre based. It is really what hits. And you and I were joking a couple weeks ago. I sent Rob a text and he was like, "What you listening to?" I was like, "Well, I was listening to some gospel a couple minutes ago, but now I'm listening to soca music. So this is also in the same 45 minutes." But again, it's what is hitting me viscerally and what is my heart like. This is what you need to hear right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
I agree that I with Jocelyn. I don't care what kind of music. I don't expect anything. I'm more like, oh, that I like it, and then I just kind of go with it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
Expecting what though? Yeah, I guess
again, it's subjective, right? So I will say my role specifically today is to facilitate. I have some biases based upon the art, so like I'm not going to interject my point of view. So I would say everything from today, these questions are based upon your personal, like how do you as a consumer, right? So I will kind of put the qualifier for me. Music is a vibration, right? So for me, I take music very differently, right? Like I sit with albums so well. So like everybody, I have to sit with it at least minimum a week, and it's the only thing I'm playing before I even comment, right? So like I think about music very differently. So I think we all kind of come at it very differently. So I would say for you, think about this as a personal experience type of thing.
Okay, so I think this is a podcast too.
I mean, it's hopefully we'll see.
So I think that also just from where these answers are coming from, it kind of helps to know the background and context.
Yeah.
So him saying like you're a minister, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Now I do. You know what I mean? So now the answers that you're going to say is going to make more sense to me.
Yep.
For me, I run a music management company, so I have a bunch of different artists that I work with, and I have to also decipher what's good and what's not, and then what does that actually mean for that artist. So
Well, and does that change though? Does good change depending on, because you're trying to figure out how many radio plays versus how many sales versus the artistic content? So is good a moving target sometimes?
Well, I guess it also goes to what is good. For me, we represent independent artists. So one thing that independent artists do, they pretty much move music because they go do counterculture. Everybody does this. Grunge, like Kurt Cobain and them did this. That was now cool. Now that becomes pop, and then we move away from that. So good to us is the opposite of
anti-hype.
Anti-hype. What everybody else is pumping.
So I will say by design, this room, on camera and off camera, was curated, and I want these things to reveal themselves naturally. So there's a reason why I didn't lead with any of those things. So the transitional question, as before we jump into the album, and I'm gonna hold you to this one. 3. All right. So off the top of your head, what are 3 adjectives you would use to describe Kanye West? Only 3. Only 3.
Is there a time limit on this?
Yep. The album's 27 minutes, so.
Golly.
So again, for those watching, I invite you to participate in sharing your thoughts again in real time. If you have my number, text me. Definitely we'll try to read the comments in real time.
This is like a night of the hot takes.
Yeah, I mean, but context matters, right? So to Von's point, these things help us understand our perspectives. So Seth, you closing up pen, so I'm gonna let you go first.
All right, so I have genius, creative, and confident.
Okay. Jocelyn, your pen's down.
It is. I said loud, confused, and human.
Okay. Michelle?
I put ego. He goes against the grain, and I didn't have a last one.
Okay.
I'm not there yet.
Vaughn was Googling, so you got some big words.
Well, I use fearless, artistic, and then I Googled visceral. It felt good when I thought about it. I had to look it up to make sure.
Yeah, that was the right word.
And it was.
There's never any shame in using the dictionary.
I love it.
Show you on point.
All right. So with that said, audience, we are going to transition into the first song. The first song is Every Hour. So I'm going to mute the mic. We'll come back on after the song is finished, and we'll again. So the question that we'll be answering after each song again is, what was the most unexpected thing you heard and or felt after hearing the song? So muting the mic. Okay, so the mic is back on. I think we have a couple comments. I'm gonna read the comments first, and then we'll jump into those answering the question. So Texas people let me know that they're on. Woohoo! Glad to see you. Adley, I'm going to bow out. I'm not a Christian, so I'm lost with anything titled Jesus. And 2, heard a conversation about the album on NPR just a couple days ago. Catch you all later. Adley, I wish you stayed on. I actually wanted the Jewish voice on this conversation, so I might circle back with you. I really, really wanted to engage. TJ used the words to describe Kanye as perfectionist, creative genius, and isolated. Christina said provocative. So those are some of the words that our audience shared with us. So based off the question, who wants to go first? What was unexpected about what you heard or felt in the first song?
I would say the speed of it. Like, it just came out of nowhere. It wasn't like a gradual progression. It wasn't an intro. It just smacked you in the face.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the unexpected was the fact that Kanye wasn't on it.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That he didn't say.
Like, it was the intro to his album, and he didn't have a verse.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking here. I was like, is he coming on?
There was, so full disclosure, I listened to this already once, but I was at work, so it was playing in the background. I was surprised, kind of. It felt like there was so much auto-tune. Like, I was like, whoa, like that was a lot. And I don't know all the pieces and parts behind it, but I was like, that was a lot of auto-tune.
Cool. All right. So transition to the second song. Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
Comment.
Got some comments. I love it. We got some engagement, baby.
Our producers.
So TJ says, the first time I heard it, I was expecting something with Ye on it with the choir.
Mm. So the common theme here is Ye wasn't on the first one.
Yeah.
Okay.
No confusion.
All right. So transition to the second song. Muting the mic.
Real quick.
All right. Max back on.
Yeah, just
Go
a
ahead.
comment on that. Which, if you look at it, I mean, it's kind of interesting because Kanye is known as being very egotistical, right?
Mhm.
And everything is about him. So for him to now have an album called Jesus is King that's kind of deflecting everything on him, and then having an intro that doesn't have him on it could have been very intentional.
Yep. So got another comment.
Sorry, I can't get the rest of it.
Are you fine? Okay. So we're gonna try to pull it up in real time. I don't see it. So
The number of devices.
all right.
We
So
gotta get involved in this
we'll
conversation.
mute and come back to.
I got it.
Okay.
Justin says, unexpected that Kanye wasn't on the track. Maybe he thinks he's the pastor of the track, and the pastor always follows the worship.
Oh.
Mm.
Brittany says in text, I'm not really sure. TJ says it definitely set the tone of the album, though. He took out the typical 808s you'd expect to open it and or synths.
Okay. Cool. All right. So transitioning to the second song.
Wait.
Okay.
I
love it. I love it.
I'm struck with the comment of that was the comment about
Him being the pastor.
he's the pastor of the album, and thus the pastor always follows the worship. That to me speaks to someone who has a very specific church experience, and that their church experience is much that, right? We come in, the choir sings, the preacher preaches. So that was very interesting. That was kind of the comment, and I didn't think about the angle of maybe Kanye thinking about himself as a pastor, but it certainly was like that's a very specific church experience.
Yeah.
It's like that was very Baptist.
I mean, to speak on that, it's kind of like having that experience. The worship sets the tone, sets the atmosphere. So Kanye's, if this was his intention, Kanye's probably saying, I want to set the tone, the atmosphere for this entire album. I'm let this thing breathe for a little bit, and I'm gonna glide right in.
I also find it interesting though that we don't always include or typify the sermon as part of the worship. We will say like worship is the singing and stuff, and then there's a sermon, but like it's kind of a whole worship service.
Yeah.
So then every part of it is at some point worship. It's just a different expression of worship. So I think sometimes we segment things.
So I have Brittany's comments. She was surprised that for his first song that he wasn't even on it, which I think shows unexpected humility. Also missed the opportunity to incorporate Jesus walks into that beat with the smiley face.
Christine also says, I've been singing all the words for a long time. It's meaningful. And then she adds, I have no history with Kanye.
Okay. All right. Now we are going to go to the second song.
Second song.
Pausing the mic. Okay, we're back. So for those watching remotely, I apologize. There's a slight delay. So what I'll do is I'll make sure I'm intentional about what song we're going to, just in case it gets mixed up a little bit. So we just finished the second song. So again, the repeated question: what was the most unexpected thing you heard and or felt after hearing that song?
How long are his songs on this album?
So I will say, based off of what Kanye did last year, when he had kind of what he produced or executive produced, most of his songs were the minimum amount of time needed to be recognized by the Grammys. So I think from what I've heard is he wanted to be as impactful as he could be with as minimum words as possible. So as you'll see, that's the reason why this body of work is only 27 minutes long. So the length of the songs range based upon like what he's trying to say or what he believes the song needs to say.
Yeah, I mean they're not like obviously your normal songs with the chorus and then the all that. It's kind of like not slam poetry, but it's kind of like.
But it kind of is.
Yeah, it's very, I mean different.
Okay.
Would it be mainstream if it wasn't Kanye?
Ask the expert.
I'm.
That's
Wouldn't
a
this,
good question. No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Actually, yeah, that and the lack of 808s and drums. I noticed that throughout the whole.
So
album.
for those that may not know what 808s are, we don't want to make any assumptions. What are 808s?
It's the
bass.
The bass
The heavy
thing that
drums.
makes
Yeah.
like
But
in
the
rap
drum
music.
machine, not right. Like
Right.
The actual drum.
It's the thing that you feel when
Because the
In the
pattern.
90s when we had the speakers in our cars.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it shook and rattled and
Made that knock.
cage.
Yeah.
Yes.
808s would give it a knock.
he spent a lot of time like over in Africa for a minute when he was making the Yandi project. So I noticed that he used a lot of instruments that he, probably played around with over there throughout the project too. So definitely his instrumentation was different.
And on the continent, they don't really use bass drums a lot. They use the higher
They use like
drums.
real.
Yeah.
Congo,
You're not gonna get. But even the bass drum sound they don't. The kind of drums that they use typically don't give even that sort of sound.
Yeah, because that was originated in like Atlanta.
Yeah. Well, especially the 808 drum machine. Absolutely. Yeah.
Just want to say also there are a lot of writers, and I did not think there were that many words.
I want to be honest. Fair.
So I used to live in LA.
Uh-huh.
And I've been in on like a professional music session. And
Yeah.
what they'll do is they'll have a bunch of writers in the room and they'll actually just sit around and actually have conversations like this. And then pick out of that conversation certain lines and stuff.
So everybody gets
So
credit.
So then everybody gets credit
Got
because
it.
everybody was kind of involved in that process.
Everybody get a Grammy.
Yeah.
Except they don't let you come on stage.
Right.
Okay. So focus. So
Alright.
off of that song, what was the most unexpected thing you heard and or felt?
I felt intensity, and even though the song was progressing, I felt the intensity in Kanye's voice in the beginning. He was really like building up to something. There was a crescendo at the end, and I just felt like this intense passion that Kanye had. And Kanye's always been a passionate dude, but this one was a little bit different. You could hear that with the
Okay. Anything else?
We have a comment.
Okay.
So TJ says, all right, there's the sense, and I know he's found his relationship with God in heaven, but he went hella stupid with the drums. Reminds me of the Jesus album in a way which is necessary in order to get to this point. Then he also added, to go with the album length, I think it's good when I'm listening to an album I'm more of a conceptual listener. Sorry, TJ, can't read the rest of your comment.
Why isn't TJ here?
So TJ had some things to go on. So I got it.
That would be great.
To go along with their album length, I think it's good. When I'm listening, I'm more of a conceptual album listener instead of singles because I like the full picture. I don't want to listen to an hour worth of songs. This is short enough to make me want more. Brittany agreed. I felt the intensity too. That was my reaction. Then Justin said I felt an ascension of the song as well. Okay. So good on the second song. So we're about to move to song 3. I'm about to mute the mic. So for the slight delay, moving to song 3. So we're back. So we just finished the third song. So you know the question. I don't have to repeat it. Jocelyn, go ahead.
So essentially, I'm confused. I was like, okay, I'm trying to follow the lyrics a little bit. There was a lyric that surprisingly stood out to me, though, when he says, my dad says, I'm not being Christ-like, but nobody ever tells you when you're being like Christ. I found that was interesting because it kind of gave me the idea that people, at least in his youth or however that happened, will tell him you're not doing the right things or the appropriate things, but that he was not getting positive reinforcement. That's what I read from that. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, I don't know. But that was just like, that was the one lyric that stood out to me. Everything else was kind of confusing. And I felt like I was trying to follow Kanye around, like, where are we going? Okay, what's happening? But that sort of hit me. That's all I have.
Okay.
To go off of that, it's like, it's like, I don't know if anybody remembers Chris Rock when he did the stand-up and he said, you know, you bragging about being a good dad, but you want a cookie?
Mm-hmm.
So Kanye's like, you know, they only tell you when you're not being Christ-like, but they don't tell you when you acting like Christ. So it's like, it's an expectation for you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But why are you not shaking my hand when I'm doing the right thing?
Mm-hmm.
So he's like venting his frustration. But one of the most unexpected things for me that I heard was his relationship or how he related to some aspects that he might have read in scripture. When he talked about wrestling with God and I don't even want to wrestle. That kind of what popped in my head was the whole story with Jacob.
The broken hip.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that was unexpected for me, how Kanye pulled that and inserted that into the song.
Mm-hmm. Vaughn, Michelle?
Well, that's the first song on the album with traditional hip hop drums and stuff. So it got the nod to
Maybe
it.
that's why I was.
That's why. And that's intentional because I mean, at the end of the day, like you said, is it a mainstream album? Now he can get played at clubs and stuff, and they will.
Yeah.
The thing is, the content though is so drastically different than the environment that it's going to be played in. That's also just artistic in itself. It's just a class.
So build on, what's the name of the
comment.
name? What's the name? Name of Follow God. So
Yeah.
if you think
Right.
about Jesus Walks as kind of that first one
Yeah.
being played in the club,
Yeah.
now this one
Yeah.
being Follow God.
Well, and this is not the first time that we've seen even music that was, well, this is categorized as gospel, but music specifically categorized as gospel by people who had long-standing gospel careers being played at nightclubs.
Oh yeah.
The Clark sisters had songs that
Oh,
were being
yeah.
played at dance clubs in the 70s.
Mhm.
And like, it's disco, right?
Yeah.
And they're in there, you brought the sunshine and it's
Yeah.
like sparkles and glitter and disco, like, right? But that, and they were very much so gospel. Their mother was a gospel, like, musician and all that, and very much like churchy, like Kojic church,
Yeah.
churchy. So that was like a revolutionary sort of thing. The same thing sort of happened with some of the Hawkins songs. Like, you know, it was like, and the old folks were like, what is going on here? And I'm like, in the club,
Mhm.
like club, Studio 54 type club.
Mhm.
Like, so this is not new.
Mhm.
That is a thing. Particularly when you do a certain type of folks, if it has a certain beat, or again, it resonates with them in a certain way and it make them feel good, they gonna play wherever they are.
Right.
And it's not relegated because it's put out by a gospel artist to be a church song, so to
Mhm.
speak. And the flip of that is we often see very frequently where there are secular songs, if you will, that people will flip and make it to a gospel
Mhm.
song.
Yep,
James
yep,
Cleveland
yep.
took a Gladys Knight song and flipped it and was singing about Jesus, and she was singing about her lost love.
Mhm.
So I think sometimes when we get into this sort of genre, like putting these things in genre boxes, we forget that music is music and things kind of flow all over the place.
Yeah.
So
that's dope.
I got really loud just then.
Yeah. So what I will say is hip hop has always borrowed and remixed, right?
Yeah.
So I think
certainly.
I think the origins of hip hop is based upon that. And to your Ray Charles was another one that would often.
Well, because when you think about some of the, you think about, I'm going like way back, like musicians like Thomas Dorsey and people like that. You think about some of the things that they did, you'd be like, wait, was that a blues song or was that a gospel song? Right. It's just often, again, particularly in, I will say, African American culture, we borrow across the genres again, if you will, because 9 times out of 10, when you look at like a lot of the R&B singers we listen to in the 90s, Dave Hollister, for one, you're like, that was a great riff. Deacon so-and-so just did that riff on Sunday. Like that, but why? Because he had been practicing that in Sunday since he was 6. And now he's singing with Blackstreet, and here you go. Like, so there's, again, we kind of try to put these things in boxes, but in real life, the boxes kind of aren't there because the music, the influences that people create their music from comes from the total body of their life.
Agreed. So we got a couple comments. I know we got a couple of texts, but Harry texted me and said his comment on song 2 is that is vocal single beyond anything he's heard in church, like heart-stopping awesomeness. It's opening the door to gospel, and he put gospel in quotations, music, to white Christians, I believe, myself included. So if you deduce from that, Harry is a white Christian.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So there's going to be some different. I've had some heart-stopping music in my services.
As a Catholic, we do not have no, we don't have that.
We're heart-stopping.
So TJ said, whereas Selah Song 2 was the build-up, Follow God was the release, and a return form for classic Ye. Otis vibes in its own way.
Otis, yeah. That's a good way.
Yeah.
I forget Otis from that.
Yeah, I got it from there for sure.
So could we say, though, here I am being nerd, because the definition, and please Seth correct me because I'm going to get it maybe a little bit wrong, but the definition, the word Selah is a pause.
Yep.
So if the first song is the introduction and this song is where it hits its heart, is that song in the middle intentional to be titled that because it is the pause to kind of go, okay, now get ready.
What does Selah mean?
Pause and reflect.
TJ
That's
also
good.
added,
That hit me. I was like, I've learned that word before. Wait a minute.
he agrees with the Jesus Walks reference and the song, and this doing the same in the club. Christine said he borrowed pop songs in his 11-1 service in LA and wrecked her. Oh, sorry, in Louisiana. And wrecked her.
All right. So we're about to transition to song 4, which is Closed on Sunday. So muting the mic. And for those watching, we're going to play Closed on Sunday. Okay, we're on. So, you know the question. Closed on Sunday. Most unexpected thing heard or felt?
That he was singing with his raw voice. He's always added some sort of effect to his voice and stuff, which is the one thing I think that he was kind of like insecure about was, you know, how he sings and stuff. So he always had distortion or whatever, but the fact that he kind of just kept it raw and he was like that the whole album, I think also was something that was done intentionally from I just got this new confidence, you know what I mean? I'm not a slave no more to public opinion or nothing. I'm free because I'm a son of God, so I can be me, I guess.
Anybody else?
So I was struck. There was a lyric, a couple stanzas, but he says, "When you got daughters, always keep them safe." And so I was struck in that is different than the typical misogyny that we hear in hip hop. We're not usually talking about women keeping them safe in hip hop, and I can say this clearly because I'm a hip hop fan, and my most difficult situation is my relationship with Too Short music. But so listen, don't blow any whistles, please. Well, right. So we started. That was a steering away from the misogyny of, you know, we would keep our daughters safe, but it reinforced the patriarchy that we see in society and in church largely. Of we're keeping the daughter safe, because in the next, you know, couple stanzas he talks about raising the sons up in the faith, but we're not talking about keeping sons safe, nor are we talking about raising daughters in the faith.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking if we got kids, we need to both make sure they're all safe, and also that we're raising them both in the faith. With the separation of that highlights to me that typical patriarchy that we see within faith spaces.
Mm-hmm. And I think, becoming a father and having a daughter, it just changes your whole perspective on things. And I thought about Nas, his song Daughters, and he's talking about when your son go out on a date, you just proud, and then he said when your daughter go on a date, you standing by the door with a sawed off. And so Kanye's having that same perspective, keeping your daughter safe. When you look at the history of Kanye's lyrics, you look at the history of hip hop in general. You touched on the misogyny aspect of it, but that whole aspect of becoming a father, now you have to protect, now you have to provide. It just changes your whole perspective and outlook on life. And you brought up a good point in terms of it was a different view in terms of the daughter and the son. He had to protect the daughter, but then raise up the son. But if you look at some of the stuff that's been happening in the news, we've been seeing some of our young boys being abused in the church. So if we're raising them up, but we're not protecting them, what are we doing?
Well, and then by protecting daughters, but then not giving them the ability to also be raised up into their full selves, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of and again, that is a patriarchal notion that we deal with regularly within church spaces. We have a lot of spaces that are like, ladies can't preach.
Yep.
You can't be in charge of anything. But y'all make up like 75% of the congregation. Make sure you bring that tithe in here, though.
Yeah, bake that
Don't
chicken.
Nothing else. And bake that chicken. Yes, the repast is happening. We need you to fry that chicken.
Yeah.
Right. But we don't want you saying nothing, no, please. So.
Anybody else? We got a couple comments. So go ahead.
So TJ says, minus the subject matter on this one, I expect this to be an interlude on Jesus for even 808s and heartbreak with how dark this one gets. Then he adds, he'll be at the next one so he's not blowing up the chat.
I love it. We're popping out here today.
Brittany adds, interesting point about keeping all kids safe in the patriarchy. I like that.
Cool. Anything else before we go to the next one? All right. So we are now. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Justin just commented, closed on Sunday, you're my Chick-fil-A. Is this implying the temptations of life that we want to do but can't?
I think so. I think so. If you look at the whole concept of Chick-fil-A, their idea of being closed on Sunday, that's their Sabbath. And
when do I always want to
right, when do I want chicken? On Sunday. And then you look at the whole aspect of them being in the Mercedes Stadium in Atlanta.
Yeah.
NFL Sunday, they're not there. They might be losing money. And the temptation of just capitalism and just going after money, they're saying, no, we got to honor something.
And in doing so, their lines be longer than all the other spots that's open on Sunday.
Exactly.
And I like the way he jokingly played around with it too, like he wasn't so serious about it. That's the one thing I was throwing. Go ahead, Michelle. You was gonna say something?
No.
Okay. Michelle has strong feelings about Chick-fil-A.
These are things. Lots of people do.
Yeah. No, and don't worry, I eat there.
It's good.
It's like self-hating me.
Those waffle fries are banging.
Yeah.
It's just like it sucks.
Love listening to your wisdom. Smart combo.
Okay. So we are going to transition to song number 5, On God, muting the mic. So we're back. So before we jump into the comments, we are like at the halfway part of the album. So keep that in the context. What did you feel? What did you hear?
There's a few things that jumped out at me. First, his first line, they say, how did you get so much favor on your side except Jesus Christ? That's what I replied. To me, I might be off, but it kind of plays into the whole prosperity gospel notion where just as long as you're saved, just as long as you quote scripture, throw money on the altar, et cetera, everything's going to be good, and favor is always going to be seen by your materialism, by the things that you accumulate. So Kanye's kind of like saying, this is how I got it so good. because Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. Look at everything I got. And he's talking about all the stuff that he's been going through. But then at the same time, the whole concept of on God is like a double entendre where, and it's a colloquialism for us to say, on God, cuz this is what I'm going to do on God. It's like, I swear.
My pledge.
Right. On God, this is what's going to happen. But then he's like saying, everything that happened to me is on God.
Right.
What happened back to me in 2003, that's on God. So he said, on God, this is what it is. But then on God,
right,
he took the responsibility to, see me through all that.
It's confusing. I saw the ego show up. The ego that Michelle mentioned had been missing. It showed up. I've been telling this line y'all since 05. And like reading Clive told you, I was like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
The other thing too is that, kind of going off what you were saying, is for those of us who believe a certain faith, we believe that we're saved by grace.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't buy it. You can't. It's grace. But grace does not absolve us of our responsibility. Right. So there are consequences to everything that we do. But the grace makes it a little less harsh, right? One thing though that was confusing to me was he talked about how much things were costing, and I raised my prices and paying tithes, and I'm like, wait, what? So you raised your prices in order to pay the tithes? That was confusing to me.
Oh yeah,
I was like, I don't
agree. I was like, yeah, if Jesus loves anything, it's an upcharge. I mean,
I'm like, I don't pay my tithes. Like, I don't tell my boss I'm paying tithes now, so you got to pay me more.
I'm not paying taxes anymore. I gotta pay tithes.
Yeah, that was a little confusing. It didn't.
You can't let your family starve. Each of your kids have a private jet. Like that just felt very hypocritical. Like, don't tell me about money when you have. Which, good for you. You earned all that money, but don't say you don't want to pay your taxes and well, God put Trump in the White House and talk about this stuff. Well, it's Jesus, forgive me. I just he still has this mentality though, where he's very defensive. I feel like in a lot of these songs, having to defend. Maybe this whole album is to defend his former actions and what he's been saying, and this is kind of his mea culpa, but it's still But I'm sorry you feel that way. More of an apology than...
Because again, grace does not absolve us of responsibility. So we can forgive you, but we're not going to pretend like you didn't say that reckless stuff. And you never really apologized for it. That's it. You can tell me you're sorry, but if you hit me in the face again, I don't know. I don't believe you.
All right, Javon, go ahead.
I don't think he's apologizing to anybody. I think that's kind of the point of I think that's what you kind of get, when you do, I guess, give yourself to God, is that now the only person I really have to answer to is him. So I don't have to please anybody in this room or anybody that's listening to the song and try to defend anything to you guys, as long as I'm good on God.
You're buying his CDs.
So I will say
we bought Fred Hammond and stuff too, though. You know what I mean? We buy gospel artists' music. I think they, they still have to make a living and make money. They just spend a lot. But I also think though the ego. I agree with that though. His ego did show up because, he said, "I can't be out here dancing with the stars." That equals being washed, right? People on there are washed up, so he still cares.
What's his wife?
That people listen to him.
Yes, she was.
Rob, was she?
She was
early on.
I think she was on.
I know
pretty
Rob
early.
was on it.
Early, she was
brother-in-law.
We'll Google later.
Yeah.
Fact check us. So I will say two things.
I thought you were facilitating.
I am, but I
gotta jump in.
So one, it's rap music, right? So part of rap music is talking that talk. So
Absolutely.
so I do think this is a rap song. He's talking that talk. And the other part, I will say, just again, as a Christian, as a believer, I think that this song is placed in the right place in the album. So I think that gets to a part of your journey or your walk, at least in my experience, where you start to feel comfortable and confident in your walk. And ego does start to slip in. So for me, I think there's a couple pieces of, I think the placement of this song, kind of where it's at in the album, makes sense based upon what the previous songs were and the fact that it's a rap song.
Ego was a dangerous monster, though.
So we have a couple of comments. Brittany says, went from 1 and 4 to 1 and 3. What statistic is this referring to?
Yeah, I was always wondered that too. What does that mean?
Because Because he was talking about prison.
People.
I know the
black people
13th
in jail?
Amendment is
I'm lost.
13th or 14th Amendment, maybe. I don't know.
No,
14th
no.
I'm just throwing stuff out. I don't
The
know.
13th is.
The 13th is what allows, if we watch the David movie, right? The 13th Amendment is what allows them to use folks as chattel still.
I thought he was referring to 1/4.
Human.
Well, no,
that's
because
2/5.
when that changed, we were
Yeah.
2/5.
It was
Yeah.
2/5.
At least the male versions, yeah.
Yeah.
The female versions of us wouldn't.
We weren't people.
Yeah, no.
Stop.
We don't know. We can go ahead.
And then Brittany adds, the inflection and intensity in his voice is similar to older songs where he is boasting. So it's interesting to hear that flow and delivery when he's boasting on someone other than himself.
Mm.
And then she adds, yes, he delivers ego in that song.
Harry also add, why would we assume On God is about Kanye? So that was Harry's comment as well.
Justin says, surprised he mentions abolishing slavery again. 13th Amendment, gotta end it. That's on me.
So
Well, now we're getting to the features.
all right.
So
So
I'm tired of hearing Kanye. Let's give somebody else a chance.
Those are all very interesting.
So
No,
what-
his features were interesting to me. I was like, who?
we're going to transition to song 6, Everything We Need, muting the mic. Okay, we're back. So we had a couple comments on the last song. So before we talk about this one, we'll pick up. So Christine said after hearing him in interviews, he acknowledged being a work in progress. And then TJ added 2 lines that stood out to me. The 13th Amendment line, which had I had to start looking up what he said because just yikes. Then saw the clause stating, and I'll post so I don't mess it up, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except a punishment for crime thereof. The parties shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States in any place subject to their jurisdiction. So basically, the loophole allowing the convict to keep prisoners as slaves. And then TJ also added, and then he, the new commander-in-chief, essentially commander-in-chief, not about that one. So, all right. So this song, what did you hear? What did you feel? Unexpected.
It's a good vibe.
I liked the beat. I did. I was like, okay.
You play it at a cookout.
It sounds a lot like what you hear on the radio now. And it's funny because I'm that person sometimes, old lady yelling at clouds, like, this new music, these kids these days. But the beat is always a thing where I'm like bobbing my head, even though I'm sometimes confused and they change songs and I don't realize it. Because it's so similar a lot of times. But wow.
Yeah. I think it also speaks to the desire to always get more than what it is that you already have. When you reference Eve, and he's like, nah, they put that apple back on the tree. If you think about it, they had everything that they needed. So Kanye talking about, knowing his past and knowing his lyrical content, he's always been the guy that, flashing, and then he's just saying, I'm content.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
For the first time, he's always overextended and always wanted more. And his ambition was the thing that made him appealing and cool, but at the same time, it was also the thing that was going to destroy him because he was always wanting more. That was just like downfall. So to him now, it's his coming of age. I have everything I need. Now his company's worth $1 billion and he's more successful now than he's ever been.
But that's on God.
That's
I hope we get 10% on that bit.
So I will say again, the interesting thing is this is the song after the ego one, though, right?
Right.
So I do think that's the.
He said in the interview that he got last year. He made $115 million and was still in debt, like $30-something million. And this year he got $68 million back on his tax returns, and he feels like that's God's way of showing off and showing that now that like you've given yourself to me, now I'm gonna make stuff easier for you, I guess.
Yeah.
Or
or he did a really good job writing off.
You're just getting really good taxes because of certain things you've done.
Capital gains.
I don't know.
So do we have any comments,
A lot
Kiel?
of things.
No.
Okay, so we're going to transition to song 7, Water. Song 7, Water. Muting the mic now. Okay, we're back. So we got a couple comments from the last song.
So TJ says, for everything we need, I mean, Ye and Dollar Sign, always a good combo, great uplifting lyrics. Sorry. We have everything we need, love that. Brittany adds, Kanye has an older song called Everything I Am. Wonder if this was named Everything We Need to play off that song to show his change in perspective.
So thoughts or feelings about Water. Most unexpected or surprising thing.
So it felt like to me, this was another one of those instances where it's like, oh, he read some scripture. And maybe that's because I felt personally attacked because of the scripture that I think that he was referencing when he's talking about the water and take the chlorine out of what we're saying, essentially. And it's like in James where it talks about, can fresh and salt water flow out the same spring? That reminds me not to say reckless things about people and two people. So that and again, maybe I'm just pulling that because that's just what I think whenever I hear something like that. But yeah, that's that part.
This one sounded like a prayer to me.
Mm. Yeah. And I think that's, yeah. And he's talking about we're water, the transparency. You know, I'm not fronting, I'm not hiding anything. I feel like that could be like a new slang term.
Like the new 100, keep it 100.
Yeah, straight water, man.
Started here, just so we're clear.
Yeah.
Don't be out there putting no t-shirts unless you want to send some money.
There was I don't know if y'all remember, but Bruce Lee had the whole thing too, like be like water.
Yeah.
I seen that.
Yeah.
This is actually one of my favorite songs on the album. And I wasn't expecting that because it didn't have no drums, and it wasn't.
Looking for the drums.
But the lyrics were really dope. It was really conceptual, you know. So I appreciated the songwriting aspect of it.
All right, so we're gonna transition to song 8, God Is. Song 8, God Is, muting the mic. All right, Mike is back. So we just finished God Is. Any comments?
Yes, so TJ commented on water. It says, seems like imagery of baptism for me and purity.
Yeah, I thought that too. I was thinking about baptism.
Okay, so God Is. What surprised you?
His voice.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah. It's not auto-tuned.
And so I'm like, I don't particularly care to hear Kanye sing. This is what I'm discovering. I can appreciate his passion, but listen, it's not work for me. I am not surprised because we talked earlier about hip hop, always, not always, but often borrowing and sampling. And so I think that this song in particular will resonate with a certain group of folks because it is a gospel standard. It is an Elkin song. If you grew up in church anytime after like 1978, you have sang this song, you know this song. So I think it'll resonate a certain way with some folks just because of what it is.
What it is, exactly. This is my least favorite song on the album. Lord forgive me,
I think the Lord is all right. I don't love most of it.
Right, yeah. That's literally all my comments was just how much I don't like this. Just how he sounds. The content is cool, but I mean, it's kind of put you in the corner where it's like, bro, like the song, or Lord forgive you. You know what I mean?
It's frantic and screechy, and it's a lot of these things. And again, I love the original song because I'm a church kid, right? This is what you do. But so it evokes a certain amount of emotion by hearing this song.
Respect and vulnerability.
I just don't love his
We don't
vocals.
have to be good at everything.
No, this is true. Listen,
you don't have to be good at everything.
I think there's a few layers I'm going to talk about in this song. I think first when he talks about worship Christ with the best of your portions, but earlier in the album he's talking about the tithe. He's increasing the prices because he got snap, I got to give my 10%. Then he's like, worship Christ with the best of your portions, the first fruit. Okay, cool. So then this is where my struggle came in. I think this is probably where Kanye in the album is really like showing his conviction about his faith. But this is my struggle. So I got an imagery of Luke 4:18 when Jesus goes into the temple and he talks about the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. And he quotes Isaiah. He said to preach the gospel to the poor, release the captives, proclaim the favorable year of the Lord. And he's talking about this is not a religion, it's a revolution. Jesus came to open all the prisons. But then you align yourself up with somebody who in the White House who is kind of like the opposite of what you're rapping about. I feel that conflict, I feel that tension where you're saying, you know, Jesus is revolutionary, but at the same time, you're kind of like stalling the revolution a little bit.
I'm going to say something and it's going to be on film and I can't even deny it, right? There is that piece though, and I don't necessarily consider it genuine, but there is that piece about that second chance bill that just came through and all that sort of stuff that's supposed to help folks that have recently been released from incarceration. Kanye's wife had some things about folks in their release and all that. I don't know necessarily that the person that put that forward was genuine. I don't think they were. So maybe that's Kanye's nexus to that kind of like thing. I don't believe I just said that aloud.
Okay, so a couple things from me. I think there is, earlier in the album, he said, love your neighbor, right? So I think the premise of where he's trying to come at is from that. But then I think the other part, just in general, is this idea that, again, as I lead with my faith, God can turn any situation around and he can use anybody, right? So I think this idea of, again, this whole challenge of ego, I think this is the challenge of also putting that God's plan will always prevail and he will use who he needs to use in order to make his. So I think there is this contradiction of, but even when he said earlier about he is the strength in this race that I run. So I think he's also recognizing that this power. So like the same way you talked about grace earlier, he's recognizing he's powered by God, and the confliction of like he's now the voice. Like even when he referenced, we got the young people on our side. So I think to your point, he's at this place like, okay, God is using me. What's going on and how do I reconcile with who I was, how people perceive me to be, what I believe I'm being called to do. And all of that is just like coming together at once. It's kind of my
That's deep.
comments.
So Brittany says she unexpectedly enjoyed his voice in this one. It's intentionally vulnerable and weak.
I put that on my notes too. I do respect the vulnerability and bareness of it.
That's your words.
TJ says, him including God is after water, if going with the baptism imagery, feels like his true acceptance of God.
All right. So we're going to transition to song 9, Hands On, featuring Fred Hammond.
Oh, man.
Okay, we're back. Thoughts?
So I really thought one of my biggest issues with religion is the judgment that people throw on it, and him kind of calling it out. Kind of was like, yeah, you know what? Like I was judging him for this whole thing, but half of me wants to say, you know, okay, I hope that he is doing this sincerely and that his life really has changed and he is trying to do everything for the best, and that he's not just using gospel music to get back with the black people that he lost with
That part.
That's so I'm truly,
That part.
that is where it. I hope that he is actually doing this because he really does believe in God and not because of what happened last year.
That's the same conversation I had with my brother.
Yeah.
I think we probably gonna have that conversation.
Well, and I'll say I really wanted to like this song because I'm a Fred Hammond fan,
Mm-hmm.
like ridiculously, unapologetically a Fred Hammond fan, and I was like, it didn't catch me, it didn't hit me. I got nothing. It was nice. I will say though, like Michelle, I was like, I'm glad he mentioned the the judgment, because sometimes that is something we as church folks do, and we will certainly call Kanye out, but not call somebody else out who sit in the pew next to us.
Yeah.
And again, you have to be careful how you call folks out, right? Like it should always be done in love. It shouldn't be done, with. I'm also with Michelle in that I sincerely hope for all the things that he has found his way and is walking this walk and running this path with Jesus, and he's not just doing it to be pandering.
Yeah.
Like that would make me real sort of irritated, because what you're not going to do is offend me as a black person and then try to get in my good graces by pretending that you love my Jesus. Like, that ain't gonna work.
So I guess to touch on that one, when he came out the gate, he with the Jesus walks, right? That was like over 10 years ago. So he came out the gate already radically different than most artists that were in that lane. I think his original self would have been this had the sequence of events hadn't happened with his mom, and then he never really recovered from that. Also, too, just dealing with fame. He's a human being, you know what I mean? So I've never been famous before. I've always wanted this. Now I have everything that I want. That is, that's my journey now to him now kind of coming full circle back to where he was in the beginning. So I think even like when you look at his discography, when it's all said and done, it's going to be really cool, because you're going to see it bright, and then it's going to have this dark sector for like a long time, and then it brightens up at the end. As far as the judgmental thing too, though, it's almost kind of like the longer you've been a Christian, it's like you're a senior on like God's basketball team, and then you just hate on all the freshmen that's coming out, because they might be better than you and they might take your spot, so you don't really work out with them. You don't want to like give them too much game, because they might take your spot. So that's kind of
that's a fun analogy. Yeah,
I love that,
because it's like some people do, they forget how they got
right.
For sure. So that's a real tricky dynamic. We can never forget how we got to God. And I think sometimes the people that forget how they got to God also don't share that story.
Yep.
So then you think that they always been super Bible thumping.
So what happens with your public profile? Like when you're public, so all of your mistakes. So, I think that's the part.
That's a fair point.
So the part for me that kind of resonated is, again, this is the one for me that's content driven, right? Yep. This is the whole judgment piece is 100% P. And again, our pastor often talks about the church being a hospital, right? And that's the place where wellness is supposed to take place. But the moment you raise your hand and say you need help, the church is off the first place to push you away. And I struggle with this whole idea of something Devon said earlier. I think is 100% like, so what if he is pandering and doing, like, ultimately his accountability is between him and God, right? So like even using the example of, well, should I give money to the homeless man because I know he's just going to buy alcohol? That's not on me to decide, right? So I struggle with us sitting in seats of judgment at time, making opinions based upon what we hope somebody's intentions are, where the reality is, if we had to lay all of our stuff out on the table.
Well, also too, because like even like you said, he's not going to play with my guy, so you possessed.
But I don't have exclusivity to that.
Yeah.
I will say though, I'm gonna push back a little bit on you though, Rob.
Yep.
Because I think there is you said, so what if this is pandering? Because my challenge is this: we have a responsibility with
absolutely.
God. And especially, and I'm gonna do something a little weird here, but especially those of us who stand up in the pulpit on Sunday, we have a responsibility with the gospel. We have to carefully handle that word. And Kanye has kind of put himself in a position because he has no. I'm not saying he's calling himself a pastor. What I'm saying is Kanye has an influence. And so people are going to listen to this just because it's Kanye, and they may never listen to Seth because he says he's a minister. They may never walk into a church, and that's okay because we are certainly thinking about different ways to reach people and different people who will reach people that we would never touch by bringing them in on a Sunday morning. But we still have to be responsible with the gospel.
Agreed.
So if he has to carefully handle this place and space where he's in right now because of the number of people that are going to have their eyes on him because he's him.
Which is why I say please pray for me. Which is why I think he's saying please pray for me.
Because I don't want them to miss God and the gospel because they so focused on Kanye.
Which is why I'm saying he's soliciting the prayers. Please pray for me. Please pray for me.
I think multiple levels to this. One, I'm like, he was talking to me in that song because the timeline of events that happened with Kanye wearing the MAGA hat, saying slavery was a choice. Then you pop up Sunday service, do a Sunday service, Coachella, Easter Sunday.
That's our biggest thing.
Yeah, that's our Super Bowl, man. Nah, but you know, and then talking about I was skeptical. I'll be honest, I was skeptical of Kanye. I was skeptical because a few things. One, knowing Kanye being self-absorbed, being Kanye is the illest of all time. I made Jesus walk, so I'm never going to hell. That Kanye.
Yeah.
So, and then to have Sunday service, and then you brought out the pandering, Michelle. If you just put this out there, if you look at all the churches he has done the Sunday services at, they have all been black churches. He hasn't gone to Elevation. Not saying he won't. He hasn't gone to Elevation. He hasn't gone to Lakewood. He's been to New Birth in Atlanta. He's been to Fellowship in Chicago. Historically, these are like mega churches and churches that are doing things in the community. Just throwing it out there. And I was trying to save this to the end, but I guess I gotta jump in.
Let it go.
I was skeptical, but then I had to like check myself. And I was drawn to a scripture in Philippians chapter 1. The context is Paul is in prison. The Apostle Paul is in prison. And he's writing his letter. He's like, you know what, man? Everybody's asking me about how do I feel about all these people preaching the gospel. And you have people preaching the gospel out of sincere motives. You have other people preaching the gospel just trying to capitalize on me being in prison so they know the Apostle Paul, the man, he's out the picture now so I can, make a come up. And Paul finally says, he's like, you know what? I don't care. I don't care what their motives are. If it's sincere, if it's self-serving, all that matters is that the gospel's being preached, and I'm gonna cheer that on. So that's what my feeling was.
Do you
Would
feel that way?
Philippians 1:15?
Philippians, yeah.
Sorry.
Do you feel that way with those the mega churches that have the pastors that have their own private jets when they're like there's these pastors that are preaching that it's easier to have a camel walk through the eye of the needle than a rich man get into heaven, and then he's flying to his jet. And they're taking from poor people. Like John Oliver did this thing where they kept sending money to this pastor, and the pastor was like, "Great, you are loved by Jesus. If you send $10 more, Jesus is going to love you anymore." Isn't that where it crosses the line, though, where it's using Jesus? I get that. Great, that is out there, but in the detriment to other people. Yeah. So that's where I struggle with, like, Kanye, you know what? If you're getting your spiritual advice from Kanye, like, that's your own, obviously I hold ministers and pastors and priests at a higher level. But I really do hope that listening to that judgment part, though, I was like, okay, I won't judge you now, but I want to see change. Like, LeBron's...
She said, I'm reserving my right.
I'm holding it. LeBron's
I'm not putting that card down, but it's in my hand.
And giving money, and doing what he can for people. Kanye, let me see what you can do.
Yeah.
I see Kim over there trying to help people in prison. Are you helping as much? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So I want to know.
So I will say...
she wants proof.
I want, which I do see, but not just this year, not when you're on probation. I want to see you.
So I just want to put out, is Sunday service is looked at as a music ministry. So I just want to be, so Kanye isn't putting himself in a position as a minister. He uses this as a music ministry, which is why he's also positioned himself with pastors that can deliver the word, because part of the feedback that he was getting is, if you're going to call it the service, it has to be both components. And that's why he also wanted to make sure that he wasn't in the center of this, and he's been aligning himself with people that can bring the message. So Sunday service is a music ministry that taps into what he believes his gifts are. Go ahead, Vaughn.
I'm curious as to with what Kanye did with the album. What is the...
So we're staying on the song. We're going to stay on the song. Don't go to an album thing yet. So with this song...
I'm gonna change the word.
Right. What's the worst that can happen from that? From people, you said people following him, and he has a lot of influence. What or are we actually afraid of happening?
That they're following Kanye, not the
Yeah.
God that he says he's proclaiming.
Yeah.
That's my fear.
Yeah.
Is that Kanye's responsibility to do? Because he's deflecting. He called it Jesus is King and gave it all to him. So if you still miss that,
you gotta keep
focus on
deflecting. You gotta keep
the
deflecting
message.
because people fall into hero worship.
Yeah,
I see this within actual churches, right?
Exactly.
They get so tied up in their pastor, they forget Jesus.
Exactly.
Pastor's on vacation, they lose their mind, right?
Exactly.
So, and they too have the responsibility to continue to say, this is who you need to be looking at. You need to be looking at God. I'm your pastor. I'm the dude. I'm the concierge. I'm not the one.
Mm-hmm.
So they have that responsibility.
Okay.
I don't say he has any less responsibility. Just like if I came to somebody and was like, hey, listen, they ask me about church or Jesus or whatever, I'm going to share it with them, but I want to make sure that they're not just following along with what Jocelyn's doing. I'm going to point them to what, if they've asked me, this is what I believe, I'm going to point them to that.
To scripture, right?
I'm going to point them to scripture because that's what I say I believe. And if they looking up to me, that's awesome that you think I'm awesome, but I'm going to fail you every time. So we need to keep looking back over here.
Okay. So we talk a lot about in churches and stuff, a lot of the miracles and stuff that Jesus did, right? A lot of the cool stuff. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that also overshadows the stuff that Jesus was actually saying, because we're looking at and we're following the fact that he walked on water.
Yeah.
And not why or the purpose. Yeah. Why did I do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think we just as humans do that anyway.
Oh, we get excited about it, Shiny. We get excited
because
about it.
it's like easier to worship something we can see than.
We have comments? And then I know Harry has some as well, so I'm gonna go with Harry's. He said having a non-believer compare the abuse of the past to Kanye's "The Straw in the Camel's Back." I'm glad I listened in before the judgment part. Then he put an emoji that was a sad face. So I think for him, I don't want to make any assumptions. So Harry, if you have specific clarity that you want to add to kind of what made the emoji, please add. I don't want to interpret. Go ahead, Kim.
So Christine goes back to, I think it was the song after Water.
Okay.
That you commented, God's plan will prevail. So Brittany says, this song made me feel convicted in a good way. I appreciate him asking, what have you been hearing from the Christians? Because it's so true. Matthew 7:3-5 talks about pointing out the speck of sawdust in others' eyes while you leave a whole plank in your eye. Justin says, favorite song on the album, so relatable and quality flow. That first somebody pray for me touches my soul. He's simply saying, instead of judging me for my wrongs and my past, pray for me now and who I am.
Yeah. I think, sorry, I don't mean to cut. I think part of what makes this song unique is that aside from Fred Hammond being on it, Fred Hammond being a legend, an OG in gospel music, Fred Hammond, I believe, experienced some of the similar things that Kanye is experiencing. Mm. You know, Fred Hammond had a different sound with Commission. Mm-hmm. He had a different sound with RFC. Mm-hmm. And people was like, man, this ain't gospel music. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so he was getting that same judgment. Mm-hmm. And Fred Hammond is like, he's an elder. Mm-hmm. And it kind of goes back to being a senior on the hoop team. Mm-hmm. You know, you have that seniority. Now you can bring somebody up with it. He's like, you know what, Kanye, I went through the same thing you're going through. And I'm going to put my hands on you. I'm going to guide you through this. Mm-hmm. And he's like interceding for him. This whole song is about intercession. He's just kind of saying, somebody intercede for me. Somebody look out for me. And Fred Hammond's like, you know what, I got you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're about to go to song 10.
It's a lot of songs in 27 minutes.
All right. And we're back live.
You don't always want to say that.
So what did you hear unexpectedly?
Can I first just say I was so excited to hear the Thornton brothers together on this track.
Yes, the clips.
Pusha T and No Malice, Terrence and Gene Thornton.
Yeah. And it was the right type of track that he said he would ever get on. Right?
Yeah.
So like when he converted.
No Malice is not doing secular rap anymore, right?
Right. Former name was Malice, now he's No Malice. Mm-hmm. And he had he had that conversion, wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. Mm-hmm. He goes in depth about his struggle and his conversion, and it's very relatable. Yeah.
So I love a good saxophone. Yeah, that part really resonated with me.
Kenny G? You was on that Kenny G?
That was not a Kenny G saxophone.
It was.
It was. That's right. That was.
Yeah, that was Kenny G.
That was. I forgot. But it was good. Listen, it's been a while since I've heard from Kenny G.
My
I love
whiteness
it.
came out there. I was like, hey, oh yeah.
I just love it. I love the saxophone. I forgot that he was on the. Yeah.
He did their Valentine's Day.
Blessed
Yep.
There's a relationship.
Hey, you know, listen, all of us ain't able. Just get Kenny G to pop up at the house.
So Brittany says the car ding noise for the beat drives me nuts and
That!
eyes with the beat after the sax.
Mhm.
But I appreciate it because I think it's a silent lyric message in the song about his experience with a car crash.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Kenny G kills it.
Yeah, so I think it's also a metaphor.
I didn't think about that, but I was just like, take keys out the ignition, bro.
No, but I think
that's a
so.
cool start.
He and I talked about this too. I think it's a metaphor because again, the whole song, but both verses of the clips are talking about kind of how they got to God, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it's like the tranquility and the peace. So like the moment they found God, that ding goes away, but then it's actually incorporated into the song. So like now you can hear the music and that what was once an annoying sound. Now it's part of the music, what makes the song nice, like the real beats are. So I like the evolution of it too. Like the annoying part, like it's intentionally to get on your nerves as you're kind of going through this walk and you found them. And then it just like smooths out really nice.
That's deep.
I didn't think about it that way. Look at that.
Vaughn, what's on your head? I see it. Come on.
No, I'm ready to talk about the whole thing.
He's just waiting.
We got some more comments.
Christine says it's an album. He's living out a call. He isn't perfect. I could go on, but I see someone reaching people that haven't been listening to any pastor or church. Like I said earlier, I have no history with Kanye. I don't know much about his music or his past statements, but I am really grateful that this may be the spark. The spark. Got so many comments coming in.
Oh boy.
Popping today.
That this might be the spark for some that need Jesus in a bad way. His music is a great start to a deeper relationship for many. At least that's what I hope. Brittany says, oh wow, good point about the tranquility. Justin says, I wasn't expecting the beat to hit so hard after the sax. Wish we had that beat for another 30 seconds. TJ says, just hold on to your brother when your faith is lost was dope by No Malice to Pusha.
Yeah.
I didn't even pick up that talking to his brother.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, TJ.
Come on, where you at? Where you at?
Hey, that was no. Okay, so we got 49 seconds. Any more comments?
Oh,
None right
We
now.
got one from our live studio audience. Throwing it to the audience.
I gotta leave because it's late for my son's downstairs. However, has anybody ever seen the documentary with No Malice?
Mm-hmm.
He goes back through where he came from and where he is now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw
I
it.
didn't see that.
It was a while.
We'll share it on the page. So
It's really hard to get past his conviction. Like even him looking back at who he used to be, he breaks down several times in that documentary. And to Michelle's comment, I don't see that with Kanye. Like it's completely different. There's so much dichotomy between what Miles is going through and where Kanye is.
Are you saying that in terms of believing that he's actually converted, or actually?
I think I struggle with where he is with that.
I think I don't know what No Malice did, but I'm assuming it was some really ill stuff as far as
they different people.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, like whatever. And I don't think Kanye ever did anything. I think the things that Kanye did that were so bad was just because of the platform and the stage.
But that walk with Christ still takes those impurities and you see them and it still cleanses you. So even though you weren't selling drugs and you have a different set of demons, there's still demons that you're exercised from. So I just don't see that sincerity in Kanye. And I could be wrong. I'm not the hugest Kanye fan. He knows that. But it's just different. Like it just doesn't pass that smell test for me just yet.
That's fair.
Everybody's walk is different.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the conviction and the cleansing is not. And the confession is not. I mean, it's one way through, right?
Yeah.
It's to confess and believe.
Yeah.
Haven't quite caught that one yet.
Yeah, but
could you have had that in private? Though?
But that's why I go to. It's a personal relationship. Like ultimately,
keep that private.
But your fruit. You watch the fruit of the tree, right?
Yeah.
So you can tell me all day that this is what I can tell you all day. I'm a good Christian woman, and if you see me running around punching kids in the face and all that, you're like, "What does this mean? Like,
what fruit are you bearing?
What fruit are you bearing?"
All right, so let's get through this last 49 seconds so we can talk about the album.
Okay.
So, all right, Vaughn is ready. All right, 49 seconds. We're gonna listen to track 11, 49 seconds, and we'll be right back. And we're back again. All right. So, the wrap-up question. After hearing this album, is the perception more positive, more negative, or about the same?
For a perception of who?
So, wherever you was in the beginning, coming into this experience of listening to Jesus is King by Kanye West, is it more positive, more negative, or about the same? So, essentially, did listening to it and having the conversation, did it move the needle at all? Based upon wherever you were coming in. So if you were, as kind of our live studio audience member, kind of projected where he was versus I'm checking for Kanye because I feel like depending upon where you were and your personal kind of thoughts about him and this type of music.
I feel more positive about Kanye. The reason why is I was a fan of Kanye when he first came out, and wanted to. And I was also young, so I was 8th, 7th, 8th grade, so super impressionable, and really liked Kanye. And then when he kind of went left with the 808s, I liked 808s, but then like when he started almost knowing that when he had the whole rumors of Illuminati and stuff on him. And then he almost started like embracing that as if that was cool, and then almost as if drunk off of all of this and the fact that I can do anything I want to do, and I'm a rock star and I'm the biggest dude on the planet and stuff. He was like the most like prototypical bad dude, like dude that fell from grace type of figure for me, and even J. Cole did the whole song
False Idols.
Yeah, going at him, and I used to feel convicted liking Kanye for a little bit. So from there, even when he would do like even like Life of Pablo, that was his last album, and apparently his walk was during that, but even then he's still talking about the motto and bleached.
Yeah,
we know all that stuff. So talking like that, I don't believe you that you've I don't
believe my
it.
favorite, to be honest. I think it's just so clever. I kind of miss it. That's actually what I miss from this whole thing, which is what's awful with me.
And then it almost made me like side eye any of his thing that he talked about. I'm a Christian, because he was talking Christian even back then when he made that project, and I just didn't believe it because I didn't see it. The fruit thing that we talk about. So I think now with this one, it makes sense. The no cussing was a great first step, and it also too, I never believed Kanye in either when he was talking about effing models and that, because you're married and you like 40 something. You know what I mean? So you in the club is not. I don't believe that either. You know what I mean? And I feel like this fits how old he is and where he's at in life. And it seems very genuine to me.
Okay.
So.
Other thoughts? Did it move the needle?
I feel a little attacked though because I was talking about age.
Oh, sorry.
I was middle school and I was like, oh Lord. But joking. But seriously, I'm kind of in the same space. And for me, like I loved College Dropout. And kind of after that, I sort of checked out on Kanye. Like he popped up here and I'm like, oh, that's a Kanye song. But I wasn't like rushed. Like I'm pretty sure that College Dropout is the only actual like Kanye that I bought. And after that, there would maybe a single or something. I'm like, oh, it's okay. But I've never listened to like, oh my God, Kanye's on. I gotta be here. So some of these even references to the songs, I'm like, I don't even remember that because I just haven't really checked for Kanye. And then the complicated factor of this being a gospel album, I don't really listen to hip hop gospel.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception of like Lecrae, that's about it.
And that one time they had one album that was decent.
Or if there's a feature on like Snoop did the thing with the whatever, he did that. Like, so if there's like a feature of like a hip hop artist on a gospel song, then but beyond that is not really. So I really was not like, I got to rush and get this because so I'm kind of in the same place though, because ever before this, I was in the place of when I started seeing the Sunday service. I was like, well, these songs feel good because these are the songs we sang in the elementary school gospel choir, but like, where are we going with this? I'm nervous because I don't want folks to be out here in the desert with Kanye and they missing Jesus. And I'm still in that place. I don't want people to be so caught up in Kanye that they miss Jesus. So if this is the moment for them to get the message, I want them to get the message. But I was there with that before I heard the album was coming out. So that's kind of where I'm still sitting.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, whatever with him. Like, it's just, I'm not going to remember this album. Like, no. I got to be honest. I also will say that I am not religious. I don't go to church. I was Catholic, so we had, like, not good music in church. Like, I don't listen to gospel in my free time, so I'm not going to listen to this again. I won't. I like old Kanye. But I can't stand Kanye. But that was my struggle with him.
Kanye is your Chick-fil-A?
It's so hard. Chick-fil-A? Yeah. And it's, I struggle with a lot of, with it. Like, God, I can't stand him. But damn, he is a genius. And I love his music when I listen to some of his lyrics. Like, I'm like, damn, how did he even come up with that? But with this, I was like, it's music. It's all right. Like, I get you're supposed to be, this is him being cathartic and like editing it all out and great for you. But as a music listener who I don't really care about your journey, I just want good music, I'm not on board.
That's fair.
Yeah. I think initially I was skeptical, like as I mentioned before. But then as I listened to it, I just looked at the big picture of it. That from a Christian perspective, this is the #1 album in the country.
It is.
And the title of it is Jesus is King.
And when was the last time a gospel album was the #1 album in the country?
Right. And we asked the question earlier, would this be mainstream if it wasn't for Kanye?
No.
If this was Lecrae, would
absolutely not.
Andy Mineo,
Fred Hammond, the legend. Right. This would not be mainstream.
Right. Snoop won a stellar with his collaboration.
He did.
So I think, if I'm putting on my preacher hat, I think from a perspective of Christianity, we can't always be looking at God doing something in a way that we're comfortable in doing it. Mm-hmm. He even said, I'm doing a new thing where you not know it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And some people are so being, judgmental and Pharisee that they're missing the whole boat. So that's where I was when I first listened. I was skeptical, but then I was like, you know what? Let me look at the big picture of this whole thing.
And that was the word I wanted to use too, was the big picture. Because would we view the album differently if we removed the label of Kanye on it and just looked at it as God using this thing that could get his album, his name #1 on the billboards? And
perfect segue. So like me, that's what makes this a breaking bread conversation. So kind of the lasting thoughts as we kind of go around with our last thoughts. So how many of our personal relationships suffer because we let our personal feelings about someone get in the way of the message that we could potentially be getting from them? Mm-hmm. So for me, as we think about breaking bread, intentional conversations, authentic listening with the goal of seeking understanding, it may not move the needle, and that's okay, right? Mm-hmm. But how do we remove the biases that we have to at least allow ourselves to be open to the potential that there might be something there? But into what you guys said earlier, hold them accountable, and let's see what the actions showcase. But we can't, in my opinion, we can't allow our biases to blind us to even being open to receiving that there could be something to receive from there. So any comments?
Which is why I listened to it twice.
The 3 times now.
It's like, it's a Kanye. All right.
So any last comments from people watching? I know a couple people have to dip out, and then we're going to go around and kind of final thoughts around the table.
Not yet.
Okay, cool. So whoever wants to go first, final thoughts.
Yeah. But I think if we took the name Kanye off, no one would be talking about this album, which is great. You know, for people that do believe in Jesus, it's great. Not great for the people that don't believe in Jesus. Maybe it causes more strife sometimes, and especially in this country, in this climate right now.
That's fair.
You know,
I
like as what I just want to say that, like, yes, the message is great, but sometimes it does matter who the message is coming from.
Yeah.
I don't need someone who's been convicted of rape telling me how to treat women. Like so sometimes you can say something to me, but if I know who you are and what you've done, like Ted Bundy and me aren't going to go out and talk about how to like go on dates. Like that's just, I don't care if he's right. It's just there's a bias. I don't think it's a bias when it's based on facts of what that person has done. Now I hope he changes, and I do have a bias against him. I do. So I don't know.
Final thoughts.
No questions. Final thoughts.
Okay. Okay, pass. Let me come.
Okay. Seth?
I hate the fact I keep going to the Bible, but that's why.
That's kind of what you do.
There's a story in the Bible. There's a gentleman by the name of Paul. There's a gentleman by the name of Barnabas, and there's a gentleman by the name of John Mark. Initially, they were a team. For some reason, they had beef. John Mark dipped out. They were working together. He disappeared. Nobody know where he went. Barnabas and Paul, they split up. They never really worked together again. At some point later, Paul is about to be executed. He's writing a letter to Timothy. And he's like, look, I'm all alone. I only have Luke with me. I want you to come. And I also want you to bring John Mark because he's useful. I think the lesson in that is, regardless of what somebody has done in the past, there is some redeeming quality. There's some usefulness about that person. And that goes to the bias that we have. Somehow, you have to look at the humanity of the person, look at the fact that they were created with purpose, created with some kind of uniqueness, created with some kind of gift, and find a way to just respect the humanity of that person and see that they're useful for some kind of purpose.
Man, trying to unpack everything so I can say it in one thing. All right, so I think that regardless of Kanye's or anybody's personal intentions of doing stuff, I think if God uses you, even if it's just for a moment, I think that you are. I'll say this. So God used even like perceived defeat in order for salvation, right? Because anybody who gets hung on a cross and gets killed like that looks like we lost, right? But that actually was the thing that they win. So with Kanye being who he is, regardless of who, even Saul, right? Wasn't Saul, didn't he kill Christians at one point? And then God used him to actually be like one of the main people we learn about in the Bible and in the New Testament. So I kind of feel like, we don't ever really understand fully what God is doing. But I think that I read on YouTube that a kid was like, I've never read the Bible before. Just listen to Kanye. I'm a Kanye super fan. Read the Bible now. So I think at that point you leave the door open for God to now come in and hopefully touch that kid's life, whether they read the Bible because they wanted to learn more about Jesus or because Kanye said the Bible was cool. It still leaves the door open and asks them one step closer to God. That's my final.
Jocelyn?
So I really hope, because I know I can't pick and choose and say if Kanye is really saved or not. I really hope, and what I understand about God is that God will get glory regardless. So whether Kanye's motives are good or bad or whatever that means, God's going to get glory because of this exposure. I still maintain, though, that we have to carefully handle the gospel. So if we're proclaiming, we have to do it right. And again, it was all right. So I probably won't be listening to it anymore. But for those people that hear it and they come seeking, that they find what they are looking for, and that they are able to get saved and have their relationship with God and grow from this experience. Because it's not up to us, the results, but when the seed is planted, this is what happens. And if Kanye is the planter this week, then so be it. That's what it is.
Any comments?
Yes.
Okay.
So TJ says the album made me think the best thing for him was having his kids and family. It was necessary to get this album and seems like a more concise album than the Ye album, at least for me. Seems like a genuinely good gospel album and done well, even though I'm personally agnostic. Hurt with the Trump stuff still does, and that the new commander-in-chief line I mentioned earlier, he says, like, commander-in-chief still confuses me. Hopeful for him to move forward, and hope he does cause I look up to him as an artist, producer, etc. He made me want to make music and gave a sense of confidence in myself. Shout out to his pastor for ghostwriting.
That's hysterical.
So the last question I kind of put on the poll was, can you separate the art from the artist? So I just kind of leave it at that. And I thank you all for your time. We've been rocking for a while, so see you back in 2 weeks. Peace.